I know that there was an experience that kind of brought you to your guidance counselor. And I wanted to know if you'd
Yep.
be comfortable with sort of talking about that, because I do think it's really amazing to amplify that guidance counselors are there to be used.
Yes.
And that, there are people in your school settings that sometimes you feel fearful to go to, but could be a very amazing outlet for so many.
Yes. I have two parts of this story
Yeah.
actually, and one part I actually have not shared publicly yet. So this will be the first time. So it was about around my junior year of high school, winter time, and it was the darkest moment in my life to this day.
Mm,
Darkest moment. Those months between, let's say, after Thanksgiving to like, let's say, early March, darkest days of my life. And the thoughts of taking my own life had become so persistent that one day I couldn't even focus in class. I had told myself I'm gonna, take my life tonight, and I did not want to do it. There was like this little glimmer of hope in the pit of my stomach saying like, no, you're meant for so much more, this can't be it. But
mm,
all the other thoughts were saying like, it's over, like, how am I going to do it? Let me think, what's in the house. Like, it was just bad.
mm,
And so I remember being in my advanced history class, bursting out in tears randomly. The teacher asked if I wanted to go to the guidance counselor. I said yes. I went to the counselor and I told her my plans. And she asked me if I was okay to continue with school, and I said yes. And she sort of let me cool down. And then she was like, I had to tell your parents about this, right? And I was like, yes. And so when I went home that night, my parents sat me down and they were very concerned. They asked if I was depressed. I admitted to it. They told me, okay, well, like we want you to get better, and like we can tell just by the way you behave around the house that like you're very sad. All of this stuff. We love you. We care
mm,
for you. All of that. Um, what you would unfortunately expect from a Black family and the Black community is we don't really talk about mental health the way we should. And so after that conversation I had with my parents, never heard about it again.
mm.
Never got therapy, nothing. And I like to say that I was touched by an angel, because about a year after that is when I finally was able to not rid myself, but have those thoughts, those terrible thoughts subside.
Mm.
And I know it sounds so cliche, but it just,
No.
one day I woke up, I felt like every day I woke up, I felt so heavy. I felt like this cloud in my head, in my
Mm,
life, in my heart. It could be a sunny day, but it felt cloudy to me. I woke
yeah.
up, it felt great. The next day I woke up, I felt great again. And I remember writing my diary. I feel happy today and I don't know why. I'm going to see how long this lasts. And it kept going for about a month where I just felt so light, so good. And I remember writing in my diary like this, there's no other way to explain this. This must have been an act of God. He must have been hearing my cries. I'm so sorry, God, forever, cursing you, all of this stuff. And from then on, I made a vow to myself to try and help others, so that they would never feel that sadness that I had been
Mm,
feeling as a young
mm,
adult, or young teenager. Fast forward though, skipping all the other details, this past COVID, this pandemic has obviously been challenging for a lot of us. And me as a 29-year-old, this is what, 12, 13 years after the moment I just described to you, I was finally able to tell my parents how I truly felt, how I felt
mm.
like they had let me down. They didn't get me the help I needed and all of this stuff. And it
Yeah.
was an explosive conversation,
Mm,
but it did happen. And they received it very well, more than I had always had this big fear of telling them how I really
mm.
felt like you did wrong, but I
Yeah.
did. And the first thing my mom said was, I didn't know you were suicidal.
Mm,
And I was like, what do you mean? I told my guidance counselor, she said she was going to tell you. And she was like, told us you were depressed, but she never mentioned anything of suicide.
What?
And so then, of course, that puts me in a position where I'm thinking I've had this resentment towards my parents for all of these years, over
I'm
a
like,
decade.
I'm going to call that school up right now.
Exactly.
Excuse me? Where is she?
Yes.
I'm finding her.
Yes.
Is she crazy?
Yes. Girl, I could go on for days. But in that moment, I really had to think about how I've been feeling all this time. And then almost going back to what we were just talking about, had I been more vocal, maybe we would have been able to address that detail before. Like, why did it have to wait?
I would just say this though. It happened the way that it happened. Don't ever put yourself down for the way that you went about things, because at the end of the day, it's brought you to where you are now. And
Yes.
even though it's taken this much time to get you to that conversation with your parents, at least you got to the conversation with your parents. You can pat yourself on the back, girl. You've been through a lot. And I think so often we want to look back and say, coulda, woulda, shoulda, right?
Right.
But we've got to cut that out, because it is what it is. And we have to live in that acceptance of what our past is. And we have to live in the acceptance of what our inner child is telling us to bring us into the present. But at least your inner child's giving you this sense of confidence now to say, this is what I dealt with. This is how I've been feeling. And now I want to use this pain to good. And I want to have a more open rapport with you on everything moving forward. The diary page that you have that says that you just got out of the cloud, like the first thing that went to my mind was like, you need to rip that out and you need to hang that up somewhere, because that is an honorment of what you've been through, and to look back at that little girl's journey and say, I'm going to hug you every single day and remind you that it does get better.